how do I build muscular endurance? Why should I build muscular endurance? And just to remind me what fuel sources are predominating when I'm training for muscular endurance.
Great. So remember, muscular endurance is something that's going to be generally in a local muscle. It is not a cardiovascular or systemic issue. And it tends to be something in the neighborhood of, say, 5 to maybe even up to 50 repetitions. So this is the classic example we give here is how many push-ups can you do in a row? Most people are going to land somewhere in that range I just said. How many sit-ups can you do in a minute? How many pull-ups? How long can you hang on a bar as a dead hang? Things like that. That's muscular endurance. Muscular endurance is not a mile run or a marathon or anything like that. So how long can I stand without breaking posture? This is muscular endurance.
A plank, a wall sit.
Great. Yes. Love all these things. Okay. Now, the reason I took you on that big, long metabolism journey is so I could help you understand exactly how to train this factor or any of these factors with a more comprehensive understanding of what's happening. Meaning, thinking back to the metabolism, if I'm going to ask my triceps to do 50 push-ups in a row, what's going to be my limiting factor? Am I going to run out of fat? No chance. Am I going to run out of glycogen? No chance. That's way too few of repetitions. You have a lot left there. So what's going to be the thing that stops me from getting 51 repetitions? Either you're going to have too high of a pH rise, so too much acid buildup, or you're going to have a problem clearing the waste. So really, this is two factors: dealing with acid buildup and getting acid out of the muscle tissue and into circulation, because you have plenty of ability to handle that small amount of acid buildup in your entire body. It's just you can't handle it in that tiny spot. Now, I picked the tricep for a very specific reason. You're going to deal with more pain when you use a large muscle group like your quads or your glutes than you are with a small muscle group. For example, nobody ever threw up after arm day, but a lot of people throw up after leg day. Why is that? Look at the total amount of waste that you're dumping into your system when you have quadrupled or 10x the muscle size. Small muscle groups are only really going to be challenged in that local area. Large ones will dump so much waste into the system that you'll want to avoid that as quickly as possible. And that's one of the reasons why you throw up after hard exercise. Great. So the reason
I'm laughing because I don't think I've ever thrown up from a weight training session. And so it's making me wonder if I've ever trained that hard. I've received or obtained the progress that I've wanted to generally over time, not every week, every workout, every month, but certainly over the 30 plus years that I've been weight training, I've achieved the results I've wanted. I have, however, vomited after a long run when I didn't hydrate well.
Sure.
Or if I drank too much water.
Sure. Oh, sure. Too much water. Yeah, you'll get that out quick.
Right. I just want to be clear because I think some people are getting the picture that if they're not vomiting at their end after their leg workout, that they're not training according to your standards. Again, by the way, Dr. Andy Galpin runs experiments in his lab. He's recruiting subjects all the
time. Also known as my graduate students.
That's right. In any event, sorry to interrupt, but I felt it was a necessary interruption. So muscular endurance, there's plenty of fuel.
Plenty of fuel. You manage acid buildup, and you also need to get that fuel out of you. That's going to be a capillarization issue. So the way that we can think about this is capillaries surround your muscle, and the whole point of them is so that blood can come into them. They hit this capillarization that actually slows the diffusion rate of blood down, and so you can exchange nutrients in and get waste products out. And then we get things back into circulation. So the more of those you have, the better you are at dispersing any of these waste products buildup, whether it's CO2 or the acid. So the adaptation you're looking for here is an increase in capillarization, potentially a slight increase in mitochondria, but the time is too fast, right? So we're going to be able to need to do these 50 repetitions in, say, under a minute or something like that. So getting the mobilization into the mitochondria, getting fuel that way, too slow. It's not really going to get our performance here. So what are strategies to increase acid buffering ability and then capillarization? So on the capillarization side, you simply need to train at that ability. So you go close to failure and practice that often. That alone will increase blood flow to that local area, which will take you through your process of increasing capillarization. Easy peasy. Specificity. Right.
So,
Land you there.
just to briefly interrupt, I find it remarkable, although not surprising, given how amazing the human body is, that simply by doing some movement repeat, like a wall sit or or push-ups or dips for that matter, repeatedly over and over and over until you reach that failure point,
Yep.
or that quaking point in the case of a wall sit, that provides a stimulus for more capillaries to be built into the system. Literally, the production or the trafficking of endothelial cells, which make up the capillaries and allow basically more little pipes to feed the system with oxygen and remove waste products.
It's
correct?
like irrigation, right? Imagine you had a giant field and you had two big pipes running down the outside. Well, in fact, if you want to make sure water gets evenly dispersed across the entire field, you'll have a bunch of offshooting little pipes. And the more of those you have, the more coverage you get.
Do we know what the specific signal is that says, hey, I failed at this, we need more capillaries?
I actually don't know what that is. I would speculate it's a combination of acidity as well as carbon dioxide and probably some nitric oxide stuff happening there, but I actually don't know.
I'm guessing nobody knows for sure, because we still don't know, for instance, what the exact signal is for hypertrophy. It's kind of an amazing situation. We know the requirements for getting the result we want,
Yeah.
but we still don't know what the specific signal is.
Yeah.
In any event, what I'm hearing is building more capillaries is great for enhancing muscular endurance. And the way to get more capillaries into those muscles is to train for muscular endurance by getting close to failure or to some point where you simply can't continue for whatever reason. Could you give us an example of what a reasonable training protocol might be in terms of the classic Galpin list now of exercise choice, maybe a few options, order, volume, and frequency?
Great.
What should we be doing? How often should we be doing it? And, for instance, should I do wall sits to failure, then push-ups to failure? Given that this is a local process, I'm guessing that if I do push-ups to failure, I'm not going to increase the number of capillaries in my legs very much.
Correct. So you nailed it. Exercise choice is high precision here. So pick the muscle group and the exact sequencing and movement pattern you want. High precision. This is the thing. If you want to get better at a plank, hold a plank. If you want to do more push-ups, do more push-ups. You can do some other stuff that's complementary, but really this is a high precision game. Do the exact same thing for exercise choice. Very simple there.
Okay. In terms of exercise order, I suppose this dovetails with volume.
Yeah.
Can I combine training, let's say wall sits for my quads and nearby muscle groups, and then do push-ups to failure, and then also do some sort of pulling exercise to failure?
Yeah, absolutely. Again, pick the exercises you want, the movement patterns you want to do, and do them. The order almost doesn't matter, with the one caveat. With larger muscle groups, particularly, again, multiple leg activities, that will induce a small amount of systemic fatigue. And so if you, I guess, theoretically wanted to maximize your push-up number and you did a whole bunch of, say, split squats, and you just did those and you did lunges for a mile or something like that, you might actually slightly compromise, you might not, but you might slightly compromise your ability to do as many pull-ups in a row or hold a bent over row or something like that. So if you really cared about that level, then you maybe want to do the thing that's most important first. In general, my recommendation, though, is to do the bigger muscle group first.
How many sets and how often should one perform training for muscular endurance, and when?
Now, the lovely part here is we've moved down the spectrum past hypertrophy. You don't need a lot of load here. In fact, the load only needs to be at or slightly above what you want to move. So if you want to get better at moving 50% of your 1 rep max, you don't really need to train much more than 50, maybe 55 or 60% of your 1 rep max. Because if you go higher than that, the repetition count is going to fall and you're no longer going to be training muscular endurance. So you just need to stay right around that number that you want to work on. So again, if the target is doing more pull-ups, and assuming that you have the strength to do it, you check that box, you simply need to practice the repetition range that you want to be in. That's all it takes. You can repeat that a number of times, but because, remember, the volume is fairly low, the load is very, very low, you can actually repeat these quite frequently. So you won't get extremely sore from muscular endurance relative to traditional hypertrophy training because the load is very, very light. So you can do these more frequently if you would like.
More frequently, such as?
You could do it 3 or 4 times a week, easy, if you would like. You don't necessarily need to. 3 days a week per muscle group is probably fine here. If you wanted to do more sets on a given day and do less days, that would be fine. So if you wanted to do 2 days a week and you say wanted to do, let's say you could do 25 push-ups and the goal is to get to 30 push-ups, just as an example. You might say, okay, I'm going to do sets of 17 and I'm going to do 3 sets of that. I'm going to do that 3 days a week. That's going to build up quite a bit. Or you could say, look, I'm going to do a set basically to failure. I'm going to recover and do 1 or 2 sets at say 80%. And I'll do that twice a week. That's going to push the pace pretty well. You're going to have a lot of gains from that.
And again, this is not about hypertrophy. This is about muscular endurance.
Correct.
So I do want to emphasize, and again, please correct me if I'm talking out of line here. I do want to emphasize that because we mentioned pull-ups. If you can't get 25 pull-ups, then and you're doing 10, you're training for hypertrophy. You're not training for muscular endurance per se.
Remember, there's a big crossover here. So anytime we're talking past like 15 reps, we're technically in hypertrophy and muscular endurance.
Got it.
So here's the common mistake. I don't want to get bulky. So I'm going to go lighter and do more reps.
And then people grow.
And then you landed still right in the middle of hypertrophy range.
Right.
So like for people who are like, oh my gosh, like every time I lift weights, I blow up, I go lighter, I do more reps, and you're still right in the hypertrophy zone.
They'd actually be much better off training very, very heavy in the 1 to 3 rep range.
Bingo.
They'd get really strong and they wouldn't grow much.
Exactly.